So the first step is to reconcile all of your bank accounts. And
That's the hard step.
we haven't done that. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So what the process of reconciling is about is this is your opportunity to make sure that what you entered matches what the bank sees. And you do this for all of your bank accounts, not just the ones you traditionally think of as bank accounts. So it's not just your checking account and your savings account, but it's your petty cash, it's your credit card, it's your PayPal, it's your any loans that you have. Okay, any kind of banking transactions that have money coming in and out are the things that you want to reconcile. And I know that, the universe is going, or all the banking industry is trying to go as eco as possible, and they're offering you the opportunity to go green and not send you your statements. But as green as I am about everything, have them send you your bank statements at the end of every single month, because if you don't think about reconciling. It's a reminder. You get it in the mail. It's like, oh yeah, it's time to take this piece of paper and do something with it.
Good point.
In addition, because when you are reconciling, most of the time it doesn't reconcile and you have to scan your transactions anyway, you might as well have them pay for the ink in the paper and not you have to go log into the website and go find the statement and then go print it out and waste your time and waste your resources. Have them send it to you in the mail. Then you have all the equipment that you need and the reminder to actually do it.
And then if you get audited later and you switch banks, you can't get your bank statements very easily if you don't already have them printed out.
Right. That's another good
I
point.
went to online because we're kind of out in the country, and our mail delivery person tends to mix mail up a lot.
Ooh.
And so, you get your bank statement that says, it's like taped on the back and said, opened by mistake, sorry, that kind of thing, if you get it at all.
Right.
And so I thought, I can't do that. I have to switch to online. But
you can still print it from the bank. Just set yourself a reminder monthly to say print bank statement and reconcile. Or the 10th of every month for the month.
So it'll be kind of that trade-off for the security and the safety of not having somebody else get access to your bank statement, but the trade-off is that you now have to go to every single one of your bank accounts and go to the statement and go print it out. So you have to decide which one's going to be a better procedure for you. So again, I'm just going to kind of give an overview. Well, actually, no, let's just talk about reconciliation. So when you're reconciling, now because this is a practice account, I can't actually do a real reconciliation here, but I'll walk through the process conceptually so that you can see what it is that you're going to do. So the reconciliation tools are up under the gear. Although, excuse me, I'm actually talking to Intuit about moving them out of the tools and moving them into transactions because this is not an import-export audit log thing. This is a thing you're supposed to actually do.
Yeah.
So the fact that it's buried in this menu is the wrong place for it. And it was kind of cute when I was talking to one of the onboarding women there. She's like, oh, well, what is reconciliation?
Oh, God.
So
it's super important.
So this is a super important thing that you are actually supposed to do on a regular basis. And I'm lobbying to have them move it under the transactions over here where it belongs.
We should get on the same page as the things we're lobbying them to do. Because I talked to Lady too. We can be like double the power.
Okay, so here's the reconciliation tool. Okay, and so last night in the mail. Yesterday was the day that Bank of America sent me all of my bank statements. So I got a stack of 5 envelopes, and so. What I do is I sit there with my laptop at night while I'm watching TV and I do my reconciliations late night. So it's not taking up my day. It's something that's just kind of fitted in as I go. When I get to the reconciliation window, I can choose what account that I'm reconciling. And you're going to see here any of the accounts that are on your balance sheet. So again, it's your bank accounts. You could reconcile asset accounts, but usually you don't really need to. You don't need to reconcile your fixed assets. You do need to reconcile your credit cards. You could reconcile your liability accounts and your long-term and your
long-term.
Let me say this again: your long-term liabilities. Yeah. You probably don't need to reconcile the current liabilities, but if you do have loans, you definitely want to reconcile your loan accounts. So I'm just going to go ahead with the checking account right here. And I'm going to click Reconcile now. And so the steps in the reconciliation process is you have your statement ending date. And when you look at your statement, it you have to find the statement range. And usually for businesses, it's the first to the last day of the month. But for some accounts, it's not. Personal accounts, they'll frequently do like the 15th to the 15th, or maybe they just do it to the 25th of the month. So you have to actually look at the statement and find the full statement range, and you're looking for the last day of the range.
Especially credit cards.
I was about to say that. If you are doing a credit card, make really sure that you're not looking at the pay by date.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really crucial. I see that mistake a lot. It's one of the things we call a PEBCAC. Problem exists between chair and keyboard. This is a user error, very, very common user error, is picking the pay by date, not the actual end of the statement range. So I'm going to assume that this is the end of the statement date. And because we're doing the end of year, I'm going to choose 12/31/14. Okay, since we were doing our year end. So ideally, you want to be doing your reconciliations every single month. But, at the end of the year, this is the time when you're doing it. The beginning balance right here will come from the previous reconciliation. And so it should just automatically match the beginning balance on the statement. If it doesn't, that means that during the month, you changed something. Don't know what you changed, but you changed something. And so that's a clue that you're going to have to go back and look. Sometimes that takes care of itself in the reconciliation process. Like you might find a transaction that was changed and then you fix, and you just have to click the new one to catch it back up again. But it might be a sign that you have a little extra work to do. So then you take the ending balance. Also make sure you're not getting the average balance, because sometimes they do the ending balance and they put the average balance below that. So make sure it's the actual ending balance for that series. And I'm just going to put in a random number here because there's no way that I'm really going to be able to reconcile this. So I put in the statement ending date, verify the beginning balance, put in my ending balance, and click OK. And now I have a list of my transactions. And it's in two columns. So checks are on this side, deposits are on this side. If you look down at the bottom, you can see your beginning balance, and then what a lot of the time when you just pull up this window, you might have a lot of things already checked off. Sometimes, if you've been reconciling regularly, you get here and it's done. What you're looking for is the difference equaling 0. The whole goal is to get this right here, this difference. Let me do it on the screen for people who are recording. This difference right here is supposed to be 0. And so if you've been using the bank feeds extensively as the starting point for all of your transactions, and I don't mean just sucking them in blindly, I mean actually like doing the work to match everything, this reconciliation could be done by now. If you're not, or if there's problems, this is where you start going to look. And so what you'll do is you look at the total amount here and look at the bank statement. What does the bank statement say your checks and payments are? Look at the bank statement. What does it say your deposits are? I usually find the deposits are pretty close to right on. It's the checks and payments where most of the elbow grease has to happen, where most of the work has to be done, is micromanaging this column right here. Some bank statements will just have one checks and payments and one deposits and make it easy. Some of the banks actually break out what was a debit card transaction, what was a check, what was a withdrawal, and they'll have like 3 different numbers that you have to add up to figure out what this one is. So every bank does their statements a little bit differently, but this is your first comparison to know where to go to look. When you do have a discrepancy down at the bottom, this difference down here, the first step is to look and see if that number is here somewhere. And if it is, you can just check it or uncheck it, and all of a sudden you're done. Or maybe there's 2 transactions, and you think about it for a second, and you're like, oh wait, these 2 add up to that difference, and then you're good. When it's not obvious, that's when the work begins. And so that's when you take out your statement and you start going through one at a time. What I usually wind up doing is unchecking all the transactions and starting from scratch. It's actually faster to start from scratch than it is to try and match half checkoffs. And so now you can, right now it's sorted by the date of the transaction. And when you're going down your transaction list, you're basically saying, okay, here's the 300. Okay, that's on here. And I'm taking my pen and I'm checking it off on the paper. And then I'm coming down to this one and I'm checking that one off and I'm checking it off on paper. And that one's not on it. Okay, I'll skip that. And that one's not on it. I'll skip that. Okay, wait, this one is on it. I'll check that. And you're just going down the column on the paper and checking everything. Now, if you have a lot of transactions, like I said, the bank sometimes groups them by the kind of transaction that they are. Your checks are in one part of the statement and your debits are in one part of the statement and your other charges are in a third part. Sometimes instead of sorting these by date, it's easier to sort them by amount. That way you can just scroll up and down the column. Okay, here's 55. Okay, there's 3,000. And you can know where it is and not have to go scanning, looking to find where it is. And I'll go back and forth. Okay, I'll look to date, I'll look to amount, I'll look to date, I'll look to amount, and I'll sort it whichever way.
Sort it by number too. Like if you have
so when you're doing the checks part of your statement, sort it by number. That will gather all the checks together into one place, and then you can run down that part of the list quickly. In fact, I like to start with my checks because they're easy to match and I can get them out of the way, and then that's just that many less transactions to actually start scanning and looking through. So once you start going down that list, you'll look at everything on the paper. If you see something that is on the paper that's not in your QuickBooks, instead of putting the little check mark next to it, put a little circle there so that you know that you have to come back to it. And then you'll find out what that transaction is, and you can just stay on this screen and come up and use the tools to go create that transaction like it should be. One of the things that's nice about QuickBooks Online is that you can also have multiple tabs. So like I can start a new tab and then type in, actually, if I do that on this sample file, it's gonna mess it up, so I'm not gonna do it.
Wait, can you tell me with words what you were
I'm about to. Yeah. Okay. So you can have, if I finish typing the address here, qbo.intuit.com, and I hit enter, it will take me to the home page on a second screen. So I can have actually as many different tabs for different screens as I want. Like I can have the reconciliation open. I can have the bank register on a second tab. I can have my customer list on a third tab. I can have as many tabs open as I want for different screens. That way you're not having to leave and enter and leave and enter and leave and enter all the different screens that you're on.
Left click on the different things and it'll say open a new tab.
Right click on it.
Yeah.
So
right
like
click.
So if I right click on this, that gives me the option to open in new window.
Whenever
and so I can do it that way.
The other way, the way you were doing where put it in, like because it brings up, you'd have to relaunch it, right?
No, it just goes straight to the home page.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've never tried it.
On this sample file, it logs me out.
Got it. Okay.
But on a real file, you can just make tabs as you go. Okay. Actually, just as a little aside, as a little bonus thing, you can, and I wish I could demonstrate it right now, but when you do have multiple tabs open, you can bookmark those tabs across your bookmark bar right here by dragging the icon down and putting it here. And then you can name each of these for the screen that it's on. You can name it Reconcile. You can name it Chart of Accounts. You can name it Products and Services List. You can name it, all what it is. And those will stay there. And so the next time that you log in, the first time they'll all come up as a generic login screen, but as soon as you log into one tab, each of the tabs will then become that thing. So you can set up your own little environment with your most used screens. So, okay, back to the reconciliation. So once you've determined that there's a couple things on your bank statement that aren't here, you can go create them. Maybe it's a check that wasn't entered. Maybe it was a customer payment that you didn't record. Whatever it is, you find out what it is, you create it in the system, and then it will show up on the list and you can check it off. Alternatively, you may find transactions that aren't yellowed out, that are in your QuickBooks but are not at the bank. The first thing to look at is it a duplicate entry? Are there two of that same dollar amount on close days? If it is, there is, you can look at this column right here, that this column, there's nothing in it in this example, but this will show you the transactions that were brought in through the bank feeds and the online banking. So if one of the transactions has one of these little icons next to it and another one doesn't, just delete the one that doesn't, because it's in there twice. There's no harm done. You don't have to avoid it. You can just get rid of it because it's not a real thing. So those are kind of the tips and tricks that I use when I'm reconciling. Is either you have an extra in your system or it's missing from your system, and then once you get everything to match, you're good to go. By the time you finish clicking off of everything, now again, this isn't going to give me a real bank balance, but something else to also check and verify, and you should actually check this at the very beginning. Double check and make sure that the statement ending balance that you entered is the same as what's on your statement, because there's nothing worse than spending an hour hunting down a typo. Okay, so the first thing to look at, actually the first thing to look at is, are there any transactions that match the difference? And if it is, just check it. The second thing to check is, did I type in the correct thing? And if you didn't, you can click on this edit information from statement link right here, and it brings up that window again, and verify and make sure you have the correct date. Verify and make sure you have the ending balance.
How'd you get that little spotlight thing?
It's called mouse pose. Yeah. Okay. Oh, one other thing to look at.
I'm sorry, what was that called?
Reconcile.
No. The prior to the circle thing, that sentence.
Verifying that you have the correct statement date and the correct ending balance, and that you didn't enter the wrong date or the wrong amount, because both of them will cause it to not work.
Okay, thank you.
One more thing to also look at is, it's possible that you entered in a transaction in the after January 1st that was really dated before December 31st. So there's also this little check mark right here that says hide transactions after the statement's end date. Now, when I uncheck that, it will show me all of the transactions from future periods. So now all of a sudden you have a lot more stuff to look at. Now, oddly, it also will start putting check marks in some of these things. So the second you uncheck this, it's not going to match. But you can go and look through and see if one of your transactions was dated wrong. And if it was dated wrong, you can click on it, change the date, and make it back to the date that it's supposed to be, and then save it. And now that you've moved that January transaction back to December, back to the proper period, you can click on hide again, and now that transaction will be there for you to click on.
Okay, so you're going to go through and look for transactions where the date is wrong, and you know the date is wrong because
your bank statement has it on it, but you're not seeing it here.
Okay.
And you're like, wait, I know I have that in there.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you don't, but you know that you have some missing transactions. Uncheck this, see if they're in here.
Okay.
And if they are, change the date to match the bank date, and then turn it back off again. Okay. So by the time you take that step with all the other things that we've said, this now should match. So I'm actually going to change my balance so that it does match this 422140. So just for giggles, I'm going to make this 422140. And I'll click OK. And so now my difference equals 0. So this is what it looks like when it's appropriately done.
Okay.
And then when I'm done, I say finish now, this button right here. And now it shows me the date of on the main reconciliation screen, I have the date of the statement, I have the date I did the work, and the ending balance. And then this will become this big long list, and then you can see which ones are up to date and which ones are are not.
One thing
done.
I see a lot with companies where we have to go back and reconcile a long time ago is that when you are reconciling, make sure what's not reconciled, that you know that really shouldn't be reconciled. Like any transactions that aren't checked off, like a check that didn't clear quite yet. Sorry, I was breath. But I'll have people that like check it all off and they're like, okay, I reconcile, because you can get it to 0. But if there are a lot of transactions that aren't reconciled, your books are going to be not right at all. So, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you use these procedures, and if you know, this is one of the reasons it's a good idea to do it every single month, because if it's this month or just last month, it's in recent memory and it's easier to figure out. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to reconcile February 2014 in 2015, you're going to have to go do some research to go figure out what these things are. So it takes more time. It's easier and faster to do it right away.
Do you have to go back all those years?
No, I would not. I would, if you've done your 2013 taxes already, you don't want to be changing your books. So I would just do, and like she could probably help you do an entry at the beginning of 14 mm-hmm. to get it to what the tax return said, and then just do 14. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was going to say is, you know, it's the first reconciliation is on any account, no matter what the date, is always hard because, you know, when you're setting up your QuickBooks for the first time, you have to get it to match the bank just to start with. And so I usually use an opening balance equity account just to get the initial amount squared away. And is that the account that you use for it?
Is that what you use when you set mine up?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Set it up so nice.
Yeah. And so the first reconciliation is always tricky, but then after that, everything should square away and match. And, you know, for you, we'll probably, you know, like I'll do your first couple and until you see the whole process, and then for homework, you'll finish the rest of it.
Yeah, if she gets it cleaned up, it won't be that hard.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's when it has to.
Yeah, mostly for you, it's going to be just making sure that you have everything entered that you're supposed to enter. Okay.
I'm still looking for my calendar.
Oh, no. Okay, no, we definitely have to find that. And that's another reason why we want you to start using the calendar on your phone and in here, because then you have your calendar and you wouldn't.
You know, my brain just can't do that.
You can't do that.
You need paper.
But I know you can teach an old dog new tricks.
That's true.
Yeah. Okay, so everybody's good on reconciling? Okay.